The torchlight flickered against the stone walls of the narrow alley behind the trading post. Liam adjusted his grip on the leather pouch filled with silver coins. 50 pieces, more than most people in the settlement saw in a year. The stranger across from him held a chain attached to a collar around the neck of a young woman who looked like she hadn't eaten in days. 50 silver pieces and she's yours, the seller growled, his blue-tinged skin marking him as one of the northern traders. She won't survive another night on the streets. The woman raised her eyes to meet Liam's gaze. Her skin was pale blue, almost human in its hue, but her silver eyes held depths that spoke of alien heritage. She was trembling, whether from cold or fear he couldn't tell. I can cook, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can clean. I can be quiet. Liam felt something twist in his chest. He had come here to buy supplies for his homestead in the Outer Territories, not to purchase a person, but the desperation in her voice, the way she offered the only thing she had left to give, her skills, her silence, made the decision for him. He handed over the pouch of coins and took the chain from the trader's hands. The woman flinched when he touched the metal links, expecting pain or rough handling. Instead, Liam immediately began working at the lock with a small tool from his belt. What's your name? He asked as the collar fell away. Amelia, she said, rubbing her neck where the metal had chafed the skin. I'm Liam. I paid to get you away from him, but what happens next is up to you. Do you trust me? Amelia looked into his eyes, searching for deception or hidden cruelty. She had learned not to trust anyone in this harsh world, but something in his manner seemed different from the others who had owned her. I don't trust anyone, she said honestly, but I have no choice. Liam nodded, understanding her position. Then come with me. My homestead is 3 days' ride from here. You'll have food, shelter, and work if you want it. But you're not a slave. You're free to leave whenever you choose. They walked through the settlement toward the stables where Liam had left his horse. The trading post was one of the last human outposts before the Wild Territories began, a rough place where desperate people came to buy and sell whatever they could. Amelia kept her head down, trying to avoid the stares of other residents who recognized her as former property. Why? She asked as they reached the stables. Why pay so much for someone you don't know? Liam was saddling his horse, a sturdy animal bred for long journeys through dangerous terrain. Because no one should be owned by another person. And because, he paused, checking the straps on his supply packs, because I've been alone on that homestead for 2 years, and I could use the company. Amelia studied him as he worked. He was tall and lean, with brown hair and green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. His clothes were practical, leather and wool, designed for hard work and harsh weather. At his side hung a sword with a worn grip, and a bow was strapped to his saddle alongside a quiver of arrows. You live alone in the Wild Territories? She asked. Most people say that's suicide. Most people are wrong, Liam replied, helping her onto the horse behind him. It's dangerous, yes, but it's also free. No rules except the ones you make yourself. No authorities except your own conscience. They rode out of the settlement as the sun was setting, heading into the wilderness that stretched endlessly beyond the last human outposts. The landscape was beautiful in its alien way. Purple grass waved in the evening breeze, and strange trees with blue-tinted bark grew in scattered groves. But Amelia knew this beauty hid countless dangers. Tell me about the homestead, she said as they made camp for the first night. Liam was building a fire with practiced efficiency, arranging stones in a circle and gathering dry wood from the surrounding area. It's built into a hillside with good water and defensible positions. I grow food in terraced gardens and raise a few animals for meat and milk. The nearest neighbors are 20 miles away, and we look out for each other when needed. What kind of neighbors? Mixed group, some humans like myself, some of the blue-skinned people who were here before us, even a few of the mountain clans who usually keep to themselves. He struck flint against steel, sending sparks into the tinder. We've learned that cooperation is better than conflict when you're trying to survive in a place like this. Amelia watched the flames catch and grow, feeling their warmth against her skin. For the first time in months, she began to relax slightly. And what would my work be? Whatever you're good at, Liam said, preparing a simple meal from his supplies. You mentioned cooking. I'm terrible at it, so that would be welcome. Cleaning, organizing, tending the gardens, caring for the animals. Or if you have other skills. I can sew and mend clothes. I know some herb lore for healing, and I can fight if necessary. Liam looked at her with interest. Fight how? Knife work mostly. Some bow training when I was younger. She accepted the bowl of stew he offered her. My people were warriors before the great changes came. Those skills don't disappear just because the world becomes civilized. Good, Liam said firmly. Where we're going, those skills might save both our lives. As if summoned by his words, a howl echoed across the grasslands, long, mournful, and definitely not human. Other voices joined it, creating a chorus that spoke of pack hunters on the move. Shadow wolves, Amelia identified, moving closer to the fire. They hunt at night, but they usually avoid humans unless they're very hungry. Or unless something has driven them from their usual territory, Liam added, checking his weapons. The blue grass has been dying in patches lately. When the prey animals move, the predators follow. The howls were getting closer. Through the darkness beyond their firelight, Amelia could see pairs of glowing eyes reflecting the flames. The pack had found them and was deciding whether they were worth the risk of attacking. How many? Liam asked, knocking an arrow. At least 6, Amelia replied, drawing a long knife from her belt. Maybe more. They're surrounding us. The first wolf broke from the shadows, a creature the size of a large dog but with proportions that were somehow wrong. Its legs were too long, its head too large, and its fur was the deep blue-black of midnight sky. Behind it came the rest of the pack, moving with predatory grace. Liam's first arrow took the lead wolf in the chest, dropping it with a yelp of pain. But the others kept coming, spreading out to attack from multiple directions. Amelia moved to cover Liam's back as he drew his sword. Her knife work was indeed skilled. She caught the first wolf to reach her with a precise thrust to the throat, then spun away from its falling body to face the next attacker. Behind you, she called, and Liam spun just in time to meet a wolf's leap with his blade. The fight was brief but vicious. The shadow wolves were fast and clever, but they weren't prepared for the coordinated defense that Liam and Amelia mounted. Within minutes, 4 wolves lay dead around their campfire, and the surviving pack members had melted back into the darkness. Well, Liam said, cleaning his sword, I'd say we work well together. Amelia was checking herself for injuries, finding only minor scratches. You fight well for a homesteader. I wasn't always a homesteader, Liam replied simply. Before I came out here, I was a soldier in the border wars. Got tired of fighting other people's battles for other people's causes. They spent the rest of the night taking turns on watch, but the wolves didn't return. By morning, scavenger birds were already picking at the carcasses, and the grasslands had returned to their deceptive peace. The second day of travel took them through more varied terrain, rocky outcroppings where crystal formations grew like alien flowers, and valleys where streams ran purple with mineral deposits. Amelia found herself relaxing further as they rode, beginning to believe that Liam's offer might be genuine. The colors are so different here, she observed as they crossed a ridge overlooking a forest of blue-bark trees. Everything changed when the skyships came, Liam said. Not just the politics and the wars, but the land itself. Plants and animals that had been here for thousands of years suddenly developed new colors, new behaviors. Some people think it was radiation from the ship's engines. Others believe it was intentional, terraforming to make the world more suitable for the newcomers. What do you think? I think it doesn't matter why it happened. What matters is learning to live with the changes. He pointed toward a distant peak where strange lights flickered around the summit. That mountain wasn't there 5 years ago. It grew out of the ground in a matter of weeks. The old maps are useless now. You have to adapt or die. That afternoon, they encountered their first real test of the day. The trail ahead was blocked by a rock slide that looked recent, too recent to be natural. Ambush? Amelia asked, studying the positioning of the fallen stones. Probably, Liam agreed, dismounting and checking his weapons. The question is whether they're bandits looking for easy prey or something worse. Their answer came in the form of war cries from the rocks above. Blue-skinned warriors emerged from concealment, armed with spears and stone axes. But these weren't the relatively civilized traders from the settlement. These were wild clansmen from the deep territories, and they had painted their faces for war. Trespassers, their leader shouted in accented but understandable speech. You die for entering sacred lands. Sacred lands? Liam called back, keeping his hands near his weapons but not drawing them yet. This has been a trade route for generations. No more, the leader replied. The spirits have awakened. They demand blood to purify the contaminated earth. Amelia counted at least 8 warriors in the rocks above, with possibly more hidden from view. The tactical situation was poor. They were outnumbered and caught in the open, while their enemies held the high ground. "Can we negotiate?" she asked quietly. "Doesn't look like it," Liam replied. Religious fanatics are the worst kind of enemy. They can't be reasoned with or bought off. The first spear was hurled without further warning, striking the ground inches from their horse's hooves. The animal reared in panic, scattering their supplies across the trail. "So much for negotiation," Liam said, drawing his bow and sending an arrow toward the spear thrower. The battle was chaotic and desperate. The warriors had the advantage of position, but Liam and Amelia had superior weapons and training. Liam's arrows found their targets with deadly precision, while Amelia used her knowledge of the terrain to find cover and strike back with throwing knives. But numbers were telling against them. For every warrior they dropped, 2 more seemed to appear from the rocks, and their supply of arrows and throwing knives was limited. "We need to move," Liam shouted, grabbing what supplies he could carry. "Find better ground." They retreated down the trail, fighting a running battle against their pursuers. The warriors were relentless, driven by whatever religious fervor had convinced them to attack travelers on what had once been neutral ground. Amelia spotted salvation, a narrow canyon entrance that would force their enemies to approach in single file. "There," she called, pointing toward the gap in the rocks. They made it to the canyon with spears and axes falling around them like deadly rain. But once inside the narrow passage, the tactical situation reversed. Now the warriors had to come at them 1 or 2 at a time, and Liam's sword work proved devastatingly effective in close quarters. "Give up," the warrior leader called from outside the canyon. "You cannot escape. We will wait until hunger drives you out." "Counteroffer," Liam replied. "Leave now and we won't kill the rest of your men when they're stupid enough to charge into this canyon." The answer was another flurry of spears, but thrown from too great a distance to be effective. The warriors were brave but not suicidal. They had learned to respect the refugees' fighting abilities. "They'll wait," Amelia said, checking their remaining supplies. "And they're probably right about hunger. We have food for maybe 2 days." "Then we don't wait," Liam decided. "The canyon goes deeper into the rocks. Maybe there's another way out." They explored the narrow passage, finding that it opened into a network of caves and tunnels carved by ancient water flows. The air was cool and damp, with strange echoes that suggested vast spaces hidden in the darkness. "I don't like this," Amelia said, studying the smooth walls that seemed almost too regular to be natural. These passages were shaped by intelligence, not erosion. "Better to face unknown dangers than certain death outside," Liam replied, lighting a torch from their supplies. They had been walking for perhaps an hour when they heard the first sounds, a rhythmic tapping that echoed through the tunnels like code signals. But the rhythm was wrong somehow, too fast and complex for human communication. "What makes sounds like that?" Liam asked. "I don't know," Amelia admitted, "but we should be very quiet until we do." They crept forward as silently as possible, following the main passage deeper into the rock. The tapping sounds grew louder and more complex, joined by other noises, scraping, clicking, and what might have been voices speaking in no language either of them recognized. The passage opened into a vast cavern, and what they saw there defied easy explanation. The space was filled with structures that hurt to look at directly, geometric forms that seemed to fold in on themselves, creating impossible angles and surfaces that appeared to exist in more than 3 dimensions. And moving among these structures were the builders, creatures that might once have been human, but had been changed beyond easy recognition. They were tall and thin, with too many joints in their limbs and fingers that ended in tools rather than nails. Their skin was translucent, showing the flow of alien fluids beneath. "The changed ones," Amelia whispered, recognizing them from old stories. People who went too deep into the influence zones around the crash sites. The alien technology rewrote their bodies and minds. "Are they dangerous?" "No one knows. They build things, but no one understands what or why. Most people avoid them entirely." As they watched, one of the changed ones approached their hiding place. It moved with fluid grace, its altered limbs carrying it across the uneven cavern floor without apparent effort. When it spoke, its voice was like music played on instruments that had never existed. "Visitors," it said, somehow making the alien sounds mean something comprehensible. "Lost ones seeking passage through our domain." We don't want to disturb you, Liam said carefully. We're just trying to find another way out of these caves. All ways lead through our domain, the creature replied, but passage can be granted for those who offer proper exchange. What kind of exchange? Knowledge, perspective. You see the world through unchanged eyes. This has value to us. The Changed One gestured toward the impossible structures around them. We build, but we have forgotten why. Perhaps you can remind us. Amelia stepped forward, studying the geometric forms more carefully. What are you trying to build? Bridges, the creature said simply. Pathways between what was and what will be. But the mathematics elude us, and the purpose grows dim. Bridges to where? To home. To the places we came from before the changes took us. The Changed One's translucent skin shifted color, showing emotions that had no human equivalent. We were like you once. We remember fragments of that existence, but the memories are incomplete. Liam and Amelia exchanged glances. These creatures weren't threatening. They were tragic. People who had been transformed against their will and now struggled to maintain some connection to their original humanity. We'll help if we can, Amelia said, but we need safe passage through your domain. This is acceptable, the Changed One agreed. Follow the marked path and do not touch the incomplete structures. Some of them exist only partially in this reality. Contact could be harmful to unchanged beings. They were guided through the cavern along a route marked with phosphorescent symbols that glowed softly in the darkness. The path wound between the impossible buildings, sometimes passing through spaces that seemed larger on the inside than their external dimensions should have allowed. How long have you been building these? Liam asked their guide. Time moves differently here, the Changed One replied. What you call years we experience as moments. What you call moments stretch into eternities. The change affects perception as well as form. They reached the far side of the cavern, where another tunnel led back toward the surface. But before they left, the Changed One had a final request. Tell others of what you have seen, it said. Tell them that the Changed Ones remember love, even if we have forgotten how to feel it. Tell them that we build bridges not out of madness, but out of hope. We will, Amelia promised. The tunnel led upward through several miles of natural cave systems before finally emerging into daylight on the far side of the mountain. They found themselves in a valley that was completely different from the landscape they had left behind. Lusher, greener, with a river running clear and cold toward distant hills. The homestead isn't far now, Liam said, checking their position against the sun. Half a day's walk through that forest. They made good time through the alien woodland, encountering nothing more dangerous than curious wildlife that watched them from a safe distance. By evening, they could see smoke rising from a chimney ahead, the first sign of Liam's home. The homestead was more substantial than Amelia had expected. Built into a natural shelf on the hillside, it consisted of several buildings connected by covered walkways. Gardens terraced down the slope below, while corrals and pastures spread across the valley floor. It's beautiful, she said, genuinely impressed by what one person had accomplished in the wilderness. It's home, Liam replied simply. And now it's yours too, for as long as you want it to be. As they approached the main house, animals emerged from the corrals to greet them, creatures that were clearly domesticated, but unlike anything from Earth. Some resembled horses, but with blue-tinted manes and 6 legs. Others might have been cattle, except for their crystalline horns and silver-spotted hides. Where did these come from? Amelia asked, fascinated by the alien livestock. Trade and experimentation, Liam explained. The blue horses are native to this region, incredibly hardy and intelligent. The cattle are a hybrid created by one of my neighbors, crossing Earth stock with local grazers. They produce milk and meat, but they can also digest the alien plants that would poison normal cattle. Inside the main house, Amelia found rooms that were simple but comfortable, furnished with handmade furniture and lit by oil lamps that burned with clean, bright flames. The kitchen was well equipped with tools for cooking and preserving food, while the living areas showed signs of someone who read voraciously and valued learning. The spare room is yours, Liam said, showing her to a chamber with a real bed and a window overlooking the valley. Take whatever time you need to settle in. Tomorrow we can discuss what kind of work interests you most. That night, for the first time in months, Amelia slept without fear. She had found something she had thought lost forever, a place where she could be safe useful, and treated with dignity. But her peace was shattered before dawn by the sound of alarm bells ringing across the valley. She rushed to the window and saw fires burning in the distance. The homesteads of Liam's neighbors were under attack. "Raiders," Liam said grimly, appearing in her doorway fully armed. "Probably the same clan that tried to kill us on the trail. They must have followed our tracks. How many? Hard to say, but enough to hit multiple targets simultaneously. We need to help defend the other homesteads, but that means leaving this place unprotected." Amelia made her decision quickly. "I'll stay here and defend your home. You go help the neighbors." "Are you sure?" "I don't know how many might come this way." "I can handle whatever comes," she said firmly, checking her weapons. "Go." People are dying while we talk. Liam mounted one of the blue horses and rode hard toward the nearest burning homestead, while Amelia prepared for siege. She moved supplies and weapons to defensive positions, barricaded the doors and windows, and settled in to wait. The attack came just after sunrise. 20 warriors painted for war emerged from the forest, carrying torches and weapons. But they had clearly expected to find the homestead undefended. The sight of a lone figure standing ready to fight seemed to confuse them. "Surrender," their leader called. "One person cannot stand against many." "Watch me," Amelia replied, loosing an arrow that took down the warrior standing next to the leader. The battle that followed tested every skill she had learned in her harsh life. The warriors were brave and determined, but they were also careless, expecting easy victory over a single defender. Amelia made them pay for that assumption, with carefully placed arrows and well-timed tactical retreats that drew them into prepared killing zones. By the time Liam returned with reinforcements from the other homesteads, 8 warriors lay dead around the buildings, and the survivors had retreated back into the forest. "Well," said one of Liam's neighbors, a blue-skinned woman named Cora, who carried a staff topped with crystal shards, "your new partner certainly knows how to handle herself in a fight." "That she does," Liam agreed, looking at Amelia with obvious respect and something deeper, gratitude perhaps, or the beginning of trust that went beyond mere survival. Over the following weeks, Amelia settled into the rhythm of homestead life. She proved to be everything she had claimed, an excellent cook who could turn the alien ingredients into meals that were both nutritious and flavorful, a careful housekeeper who brought order to spaces that had been managed by a bachelor for too long, and a skilled worker who could handle any task from tending animals to repairing equipment. But more than that, she became a partner in the truest sense. When decisions needed to be made about crops or livestock or trade agreements with neighbors, Liam consulted her as an equal. When danger threatened, they defended their home side by side. When evenings brought leisure time, they shared stories and knowledge, learning about each other's backgrounds and dreams. "I never expected this," Amelia said one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the alien sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. "What didn't you expect?" "To be happy, to feel like I belong somewhere." She looked at him seriously. "When you bought me in that alley, I thought I was just changing from one form of slavery to another. And now? Now I know what freedom actually means. Not just the absence of chains, but the presence of choice. The ability to build something meaningful with another person." Liam nodded slowly. "I never expected it either. I came out here to be alone, to escape from the complications of dealing with other people. But having you here, it's made everything better. The work is easier, the dangers are more manageable, and the evenings are far less lonely." They were interrupted by the arrival of a messenger, one of the young people who carried news between the scattered homesteads. This one looked exhausted and frightened, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. "There's an army coming," he gasped, accepting the cup of water Amelia offered him. 300 warriors from the deep clans, led by someone they call the Prophet of the Old Ways. They're burning every settlement they come to, killing anyone who won't join their crusade. "How far away?" Liam asked. 2 days, maybe 3. "They're moving fast, but they're also stopping to destroy everything in their path." The messenger looked around at the peaceful homestead. "You need to evacuate. Everyone in the valley needs to evacuate." "Evacuate to where?" Amelia asked practically. "The trading post couldn't hold 50 people, let alone the entire valley population." "There's talk of making a stand at the old fortress in the northern hills," the messenger replied. "It's defensible, and there are supply caches hidden there from the old wars. But getting everyone there safely." He shook his head. It would be a fighting retreat all the way. After the messenger left to warn other homesteads, Liam and Amelia spent the night planning. The choice was clear but not easy. Flee and abandon everything they had built, or stay and fight against impossible odds. "What do you want to do?" Liam asked. "I want to fight," Amelia said without hesitation. "I've run from bullies and fanatics my entire life. I'm tired of running. Even if we can't win, especially if we can't win, someone has to make a stand, has to show that freedom is worth defending." She met his eyes. "But I won't ask you to die for my convictions. If you want to evacuate—" "We're partners," Liam interrupted. "We make this decision together, and we live with the consequences together." They spent the next day preparing for siege, working alongside their neighbors to create defensive positions and stockpile supplies. The blue-skinned woman Cora brought news that a dozen families had decided to make their stand at various homesteads rather than retreat to the fortress. "Scattered resistance," she explained. "Make them pay for every mile, every building. Slow them down and bleed them dry." "It's a good strategy," Amelia agreed, "but it requires people willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good." "We all are," Cora said simply. "This valley is our home. We won't abandon it to madmen and fanatics." The army arrived on the third day, just as the Bakener messenger had predicted. From their position on the hillside, Liam and Amelia could see the force spreading across the valley floor. Hundreds of warriors organized into disciplined formations, led by a figure in elaborate ceremonial armor who could only be the prophet himself. The first attacks came against the homesteads on the valley floor, and the defenders' strategy immediately proved its worth. The fanatic army was forced to assault each position individually, taking casualties for every building they captured. Some homesteads fell quickly, but others held out for hours, extracting a terrible price from their attackers. By evening, the army had advanced perhaps 2 miles into the valley, but at the cost of over 50 casualties. The prophet's forces were learning that their holy war would not be the easy conquest they had expected. "They'll come for us tomorrow," Liam observed, watching the enemy forces make camp below. "We're too visible up here to ignore." "Let them come," Amelia replied, checking her weapons one final time. "We'll give them a fight they won't forget." The attack began at dawn with a frontal assault up the hillside. The warriors chanted religious hymns as they climbed, calling on their spirits to grant them victory over the heretics and unbelievers. Liam and Amelia met them with arrows first, then steel. Their defensive position was strong, and they had prepared well, but sheer numbers began to tell as the morning wore on. For every attacker they dropped, 2 more took his place. "The house is lost," Liam said during a brief lull in the fighting. "We need to fall back to the secondary positions." They retreated through a series of prepared fallback points, each one costing the attackers more time and lives. But inevitably, they were pushed back to their final defensive position, a natural cave complex behind the main house that could only be approached through a narrow entrance. "This is it," Amelia said, reloading her bow with the last of their arrows. "This is where we make our final stand." But even as the words left her mouth, they heard new sounds from the valley below. War cries in different voices, and the clash of weapons meeting weapons. Through the cave mouth, they could see a new force engaging the prophet's army. Dozens of mounted warriors led by familiar figures. "The Changed Ones," Liam breathed in amazement. "They've left their caverns to join the fight." The Changed Ones fought with weapons and tactics that defied conventional understanding. Their altered bodies moved with impossible grace, and their tools seemed to function more like extensions of their will than simple mechanical devices. The prophet's warriors, already exhausted from hours of fighting, found themselves facing enemies unlike anything they had ever encountered. The battle turned quickly. Faced with opposition they couldn't understand or effectively counter, the fanatic army began to break apart. Units that had held together through the morning's fighting suddenly lost cohesion as their religious certainty was shaken by the appearance of beings that shouldn't exist. "We need to help them," Amelia said, preparing to leave the cave. "Wait," Liam cautioned. "Let's see how this develops before we commit ourselves." But the battle was already decided. Within an hour, the prophet's army was in full retreat, leaving behind their dead and wounded as they fled back toward the wild territories. The holy war that was supposed to purify the valley had instead been broken against the determination of people who refused to surrender their freedom. As the survivors emerged from their defensive positions, they found the Changed Ones waiting for them. The alien beings had suffered casualties in the fighting, but they seemed oddly peaceful despite the violence they had just participated in. "Why did you help us?" Cora asked the leader of the Changed Ones. "Because you reminded us of something we had forgotten," the creature replied in its musical voice. "The value of choice. The importance of building rather than destroying." It gestured toward the valley where smoke still rose from burned homesteads. "We came to protect what grows, not what dies." In the days that followed, the valley began to heal. Damaged homesteads were rebuilt, often with help from the Changed Ones, who brought their impossible construction techniques to bear on the work. The scattered communities grew closer, united by their shared struggle against fanaticism and their mutual respect for each other's courage. "It's better than it was before," Amelia observed as she and Liam worked to repair their own damaged buildings. "The attack brought us all together in a way that might never have happened otherwise. And it proved something important," Liam added. "That freedom is worth fighting for, even against impossible odds." "Especially against impossible odds," Amelia corrected. "Easy victories don't teach you anything about yourself. It's when everything seems hopeless that you discover what you're really made of." As the seasons passed, their partnership deepened into something neither of them had expected when they first met in that dark alley behind the trading post. They were no longer just allies in survival, but true companions who had chosen to build a life together in defiance of a world that seemed designed to tear people apart. "Do you ever regret it?" Liam asked one evening as they watched the alien stars emerge in the darkening sky. "Coming out here, staying when you could have left?" "Never," Amelia replied without hesitation. "This is the first place I've ever been where I could be myself completely, not hiding my skills, not diminishing my intelligence, not pretending to be less than I am in order to avoid threatening someone's ego. And now I know what it means to be truly alive, to face each day as a challenge rather than an ordeal, to build something meaningful with someone who sees me as an equal." Quote. She smiled at him. "50 silver pieces was the best investment you ever made." "The best investment I ever made was trusting you to be exactly who you said you were," Liam corrected. "Someone who could cook, clean, and be quiet when necessary, but also someone with the courage to fight for what's right and the wisdom to build rather than destroy." In the distance, lights flickered in the windows of their neighbors' homes, each one representing another story of survival and hope in a harsh and alien world. The valley had become more than just a collection of homesteads. It was a community, a place where different peoples could work together despite their differences. And at the heart of it all was the simple truth that had brought them together in the first place, that everyone deserved dignity, freedom, and the chance to build something meaningful with their lives. It was a truth worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, and worth dying for if necessary. But more importantly, it was a truth worth living for. As they walked back toward their rebuilt home, Amelia reflected on how much her life had changed since that night in the alley. She had offered to cook, clean, and be quiet in exchange for basic survival. Instead, she had found a partner, a purpose, and a place where her strength was valued rather than feared. But their peace was destined to be temporary. 3 months after the Prophet's defeat, new threats began to emerge from the wasteland beyond the valley. Reports came from traveling merchants of strange lights in the sky and massive structures rising from the desert sands, structures that matched no known architecture from any of the local peoples. "The skyships are returning," Cora announced during a gathering of the valley's leaders. "My contacts in the eastern settlements report seeing vessels landing near the old crash sites. Whatever drove them away before is no longer keeping them at bay." Liam and Amelia exchanged grim looks. They had heard stories of the skyship people, tall, pale beings with technology that seemed like magic to those who encountered it. The original alien invasion had failed not through military defeat, but because of some kind of internal conflict that had caused the invaders to withdraw. Now, apparently, that conflict had been resolved. "What do they want?" asked Marcus, the leader of the northern homesteads. "The same thing they wanted before," Cora replied. "Resources, territory, and slaves. The difference is that this time they know what to expect from the local resistance." "How long do we have?" Amelia asked. "Hard to say. The advanced scouts are already moving through the outer territories, mapping settlements and assessing defensive capabilities. The main force could arrive within weeks." That night, as Liam and Amelia discussed their options, they realized that the peaceful life they had built was once again under threat. But this time, the enemy would not be disorganized fanatics, driven by religious fervor. It would be disciplined invaders with superior technology and decades of experience in planetary conquest. We could flee deeper into the wilderness, Liam suggested without much conviction. Find some place remote enough that they'll never bother to search for us. And abandon everyone else? Amelia shook her head. After what we've built here? After what we've learned about standing together against oppression? Then we fight. We fight, she agreed. But this time we need to be smarter about it. The tactics that worked against the Prophet's army won't be effective against enemies with energy weapons and flying vehicles. They spent the following days consulting with the Changed Ones, whose altered perspectives and strange technologies might provide insights into fighting an advanced enemy. The discussion took place in the Crystal Caverns, where the Changed Ones had built their impossible structures. We remember the Skyship people, the lead Changed One told them in its musical voice. Before our transformation, some of us fought against their first invasion. They are powerful, but they are not invincible. What are their weaknesses? Liam asked. They depend heavily on their technology, disrupt their equipment, and they become vulnerable. They also have rigid hierarchical thinking. They struggle to adapt when confronted with tactics that fall outside their anticipated parameters. How do we disrupt their technology? The Changed One gestured toward one of the crystal formations that pulsed with inner light. The same energies that transformed us can interfere with their systems, but using such energies is dangerous for unchanged beings. Exposure can cause mutations or death. Amelia studied the glowing crystals thoughtfully. What if we don't have to be directly exposed? Could we create weapons or traps that channel this energy? Possible, the Changed One agreed, but the construction would require both unchanged and changed individuals working together. The crystals respond to intention as much as to physical manipulation. Over the following weeks, an unusual alliance formed between the Valley's defenders and the Changed Ones. Working together, they created weapons unlike anything seen on this world. Crystal-tipped arrows that could discharge disruptive energy on impact, explosive devices that channeled the power of the alien formations, and defensive barriers that could deflect energy weapons. But even as they prepared for war, the first Skyship scouts were already infiltrating the Valley. These weren't the crude spies that local armies might send, but beings that could disguise themselves as travelers or merchants while gathering detailed intelligence about defensive preparations. The first spy was discovered by accident when one of the young farmers noticed that his livestock became agitated whenever a particular traveling merchant approached. Animals often sense things that humans missed, and this farmer was wise enough to pay attention to their warnings. "There's something wrong with him," the farmer reported to Liam and Amelia. "He asks too many questions about our defenses, and he always seems to know more about our valley than any outsider should." They confronted the suspected spy that evening, surrounding him as he made camp near the southern edge of the valley. When cornered, the being dropped its human disguise, revealing the tall, pale form that marked it as one of the Skyship people. The alien moved with inhuman speed, drawing a weapon that crackled with energy. But Amelia was faster, her arrow taking it in the throat before it could fire. The alien collapsed, its disguise device sparking and failing as it died. "One down," Liam said grimly. "How many more are out there?" They found out soon enough. The spy's death apparently triggered some kind of signal because within hours the sky was filled with lights moving in formation toward the valley. The invasion had begun. The first attack came at dawn, delivered by flying vehicles that descended from the clouds like mechanical birds of prey. Energy weapons lanced down from the sky, setting buildings ablaze and scattering livestock across the fields. But the defenders were ready. Crystal-powered defensive barriers sprang to life around key positions, deflecting the energy blasts back toward their sources. Several of the flying vehicles crashed as their own weapons were turned against them, their pilots apparently unprepared for such tactics. "It's working," Cora shouted from her position near the main defensive battery. "The crystal technology is disrupting their systems." But the Skyship people adapted quickly. The second wave of attackers approached more cautiously, probing for weaknesses in the crystal barriers and testing different weapon frequencies. They were learning, adjusting their tactics in real time. "They're trying to find a frequency that can penetrate our defenses," one of the Changed Ones observed. "When they succeed, our barriers will become useless." "Then we don't let them succeed," Amelia replied, knocking one of the crystal-tipped arrows. "We take the fight to them." The counterattack began with teams of defenders using the tunnels and caves to approach the landed skyships. The aliens had established a base camp in the lower valley, apparently confident that their technological superiority would prevent any effective resistance. They were wrong. Liam led a team through the underground passages the Changed Ones had shown them, emerging behind the enemy lines with enough explosive devices to level half the valley. But instead of simply destroying everything, they targeted specific systems, power generators, communication arrays, and vehicle maintenance facilities. The explosions lit up the night sky as alien technology succumbed to weapons powered by the very energies that had transformed this world. Vehicles crashed as their control systems failed, and the invaders found themselves cut off from their orbital support. But the victory came at a cost. Several of the defenders were caught in the blasts, and the energy released by the crystal weapons was taking a toll on those who used them. Amelia noticed that her hands were beginning to show a faint blue tinge after handling the crystal arrows, and she wasn't the only one experiencing changes. "The energy is affecting us," she told Liam as they regrouped after the attack. "If we keep using these weapons, we might end up like the Changed Ones," he finished, transformed beyond recognition. It was a sobering realization. They had found weapons capable of defeating the invaders, but using those weapons might cost them their humanity. The choice was stark: remain human and probably die, or accept transformation and live as something else entirely. "What do the Changed Ones say about it?" Liam asked. "They say that change is not always loss," Amelia replied. "That what they became is different from what they were, but not necessarily worse. Just different." The next morning brought a new development. A delegation of skyship people approached under a flag of truce, led by a being that was clearly of higher rank than the common soldiers. Its bearing was regal, and its equipment more elaborate than anything they had seen before. "I am Commander Zeth Ka of the 3rd Expansion Fleet," it announced in perfectly clear human speech. "I come to offer terms for your surrender." "What terms?" Liam asked, though he had no intention of surrendering. "Serve us willingly, and your valley will be spared destruction. Your people will be relocated to suitable work areas where they will contribute to the greater expansion. Refuse, and we will level every structure and claim this territory by right of conquest." "Counter-offer," Amelia said, stepping forward with one of the crystal arrows knocked in her bow. "Leave our world entirely, and we won't demonstrate what our new weapons can do to your command vessel." The alien commander studied the crystal-tipped arrow with what might have been amusement. "You threaten us with primitive weapons enhanced by chaotic energy fields? Such devices are dangerous to the user as much as the target." "Which is why we're not afraid to use them," Amelia replied calmly. "We've already accepted the risks." Something in her tone seemed to penetrate the alien's confidence. It studied the assembled defenders more carefully, noting the faint blue tinges that several of them now displayed, evidence of exposure to the transformative energies. "You would sacrifice your own forms to resist us?" the commander asked. "We would sacrifice anything to remain free," Liam answered. "That's something you clearly don't understand." The commander's expression, as much as could be read on its alien features, shifted from amusement to something approaching respect. "Perhaps we underestimated your species. Very well, we will withdraw from this valley, but the offer remains open. When you realize the futility of resistance, we will still accept your surrender." "Don't hold your breath," Amelia said, though she doubted the alien would understand the idiom. The skyship forces withdrew that same day, their vehicles rising into the clouds and disappearing beyond the horizon. But the defenders knew this was only a temporary respite. The aliens would return with better tactics and more powerful weapons. "They're regrouping," Cora observed as they watched the last of the enemy vehicles disappear. "Analyzing our capabilities and planning a more effective assault." "Then we need to be ready for them," Liam said, "and we need to decide how far we're willing to go to defend our freedom." The decision was made easier by events beyond their control. Over the following weeks, more of the defenders began showing signs of transformation. The crystal weapons were changing them, whether they used them actively or not. Simply being in contact with the energies was enough to trigger the process. "It's not as bad as I expected," admitted Jonas, one of the farmers whose skin had taken on a distinctly blue cast. "I feel different, stronger in some ways, more aware of the connections between living things." "But still yourself?" Amelia asked. Still myself, he confirmed. Just more than I was before. The changed ones worked with the transforming defenders, helping them understand and control their new abilities. What had once been seen as a curse began to look more like an opportunity, a chance to become something that could truly stand against the invaders on equal terms. When the skyship people returned, they faced an enemy unlike anything they had anticipated. The defenders moved with enhanced speed and strength, their transformed senses allowing them to detect approaching vehicles long before they became visible. The crystal weapons were now wielded by beings who could channel the energies safely, making them far more effective than before. The battle raged for 3 days and nights. The aliens threw everything they had at the valley: ground forces, aerial assaults, even orbital bombardments that carved craters in the surrounding hills. But for every defender they killed, 2 more seemed to appear, moving through tunnels and passages that the invaders couldn't map or predict. On the 3rd night, as energy blasts lit up the sky like a deadly aurora, the tide finally turned. A coordinated assault by transformed defenders succeeded in reaching the main alien command post, where Amelia and Liam confronted Commander Zethka one final time. "This is impossible," the alien commander snarled, its composed demeanor finally cracking. "You are primitives. You should not be able to stand against us." "That's where you made your mistake," Amelia replied, her transformed features now clearly showing the blue-tinged skin and silver eyes that marked her new nature. "You assumed that primitive meant weak. You forgot that the greatest strength often comes from having nothing left to lose." The crystal arrow she loosed took the commander center mass, the energy discharge short-circuiting every piece of technology within 50 feet. As the alien fell, its remaining forces began a chaotic retreat, their command structure shattered and their technological advantage neutralized. The victory was complete, but it came with a price that few had anticipated. Nearly half the valley's defenders now showed clear signs of transformation, their human heritage blended with something alien and powerful. They were no longer entirely the people they had been, but they were still themselves, changed, enhanced, but not diminished. "Do you regret it?" Liam asked Amelia as they stood among the wreckage of the alien base camp. His own transformation was evident in the crystalline patches that now marked his hands and forearms, giving him the ability to interface directly with the alien technology they had captured. "Never," she replied without hesitation. "We're still us. We're still free, and now we're strong enough to stay that way." In the months that followed, other settlements throughout the region began seeking their help. Word had spread of the valley that had defeated the skyship people, and refugees arrived daily seeking sanctuary and the chance to join their community. The changed ones emerged from their caverns to help integrate the newcomers, sharing their knowledge of transformation and adaptation. What had once been a small agricultural valley became the center of a new civilization, one that blended human determination with alien capabilities. "We're building something new here," Cora observed during one of their regular planning meetings. "Something that's never existed before on any world. A society where change is embraced rather than feared," added one of the newer arrivals, a woman whose exposure to the crystal energies had given her the ability to communicate directly with the valley's alien wildlife. As seasons passed and their community grew, Amelia often reflected on the journey that had brought her to this place. She had started as a desperate woman offering to cook, clean, and be quiet in exchange for basic survival. Now she was a leader, a warrior, and something entirely new, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it could become. "I can cook," she said one evening, as she and Liam worked together to prepare a feast for the community's latest celebration. "I can clean. I can be quiet when necessary. And you can fight, lead, transform, and inspire," Liam added, his crystalline enhanced hands working alongside hers to create something beautiful and nourishing. "You can be everything you were meant to be and more." The alien stars shone down on their transformed valley, no longer symbols of isolation but beacons of hope for all those who sought freedom. They had faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious, not by remaining unchanged but by embracing change itself as a path to strength. Whatever the future might bring, they would meet it as they had met every challenge, together, transformed but not diminished, free to choose their own destiny among the stars.